All right. All right. Good evening and hello. Apologies for the late start. We were in an executive session that ran over, but it is 7:29 p.m. On Monday, May the 20th, and I am calling to order the meeting of the Hamilton Select Board. Do I need to say?
You don't need to.
We're all, everybody's here. Well done, everyone. First things first, we're just going to run through some of the board and committee openings. If you are looking for a way to get involved, I suggest you find out more about some of these awesome openings. We have 2 openings on the Conservation Commission, 2 associate openings on the Council on Aging, 1 opening and 1 associate opening on the Finance and Advisory Committee, 1 opening on the Hamilton Wyndham Cultural Council, 2 openings for 3-year term and 2 openings for 2-year term, one of which must be a resident of the Historic District and 1 must be a resident realtor on the Historic District Commission, 1 opening on the Human Rights Commission, 1 associate opening on the Planning Board, and 1 associate opening on the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals. Somebody said to me, how do I even apply to be on one of these boards? Joe, how does someone apply to be on one of these boards if they're interested?
Application on the town website. If you can download the application, complete it, submit it to the town manager's office. You can add in supporting information like your resume or a letter of interest, and that gets forwarded to the boards or committees that you show an interest in joining. Those boards or committees will contact you to have you meet with them, discuss the position and the role, and then they would take a vote and submit a recommendation to the select board asking for you to be appointed.
Thank you for that, Joe. All right, next we have our public comment. We welcome members of the public to make a 3-minute comment on topics that are not already on the agenda. As a reminder, if there is something on the agenda relevant to the comment, we ask that you hold your comments to that place in the agenda. But if there are other topics that you'd like to discuss, now is the time.
Brian raised his hand.
Ryan?
Brian.
Brian's
I
on the
think.
agenda, though.
Oh, thought he raised his hand. Maybe just adjusting his camera.
Brian, we're all staring at you awkwardly, wondering if you'd like to say something.
No, I'm sorry. I don't have anything for public comment.
All right, awesome. Anybody else online or in person who would like to make public comment? All right. Next, we'll move on to Select Board and Town Manager reports. I'll start, Joe, with you.
Yeah, just really, the town manager report is being filled in by the department heads. We'll have it for Friday, and it'll be disseminated as usual. But I did want to use this opportunity to make people aware that the town is collaborating on a public information session or forum. We'll be promoting that soon. That will be held on June 12th here at the library. It'll be done in hybrid fashion with a Zoom webinar, as well as a room full of seats for people who want to come in and talk with us about kind of how we got to where we are and where we're at and what the process going forward is with regard to things like the town center plan that we hired Util for, the proposal, the state 3A zoning law, and state 3A zoning law, and the school, elementary school project, among other things. We'll probably, those 3 things will probably dominate the conversation that night. If we have to have a second one to talk about other things that are in front of us, we can always do that, but I think those are the 3 pressing things. There is some overlap, there is some concern about how we got here, so we want to have a very public comment, information and sharing session with the public.
Joe, I had one thing if you can add to it, but I know we'll be very glad when the paving is done, but can you just, any message you want to give in terms of patience or pre-planning or proactiveness on
Paving for where?
all the paving going on in 1A and all this stuff?
So what's happening on 1A is the state, Mass Highway is doing a resurfacing of the road from the train tracks to the Ipswich line. They're, in the first process, they're doing a cold planning where they're removing and then putting back several inches of blacktop. They'll then do all the structures in the road, and then they will come back. They should be done with this first phase by the end of this week. We're expecting maybe even as early as Thursday. And then they'll come back and they'll be working a little bit at a time on just the structures in the road, the drains and things like that. Then they'll come back later on and add several inches of new blacktop on top of that. But the first part of it will be done here this week, and we shouldn't have too much problem with traffic by Thursday or Friday, certainly by next week. That's their plan, is to have most of the equipment out of town before the end of the week. So they were working on the southbound side of the road today and tomorrow. I haven't been out since lunchtime, so I don't know if they got all the way to the train tracks or not. That was they wanted to stay late to try to get to the train tracks southbound, and then they would turn around and start north tomorrow from there, so.
Bill, any updates for the group?
I know we've shifted liaisons. Tom, did you have an update on the schools, or do you want me to, or?
If you have an update, you can feel free to
Well, the
speak.
school committee did meet, excuse me, last Thursday. There was a long citizens' comment section, about 30 minutes. A lot of participants, challenging the decision on consolidating schools versus the values, pros and cons of regional schools. I just wanted to bring up, they also talked about the polling that's going to be done. It's not going to be a mailing to everybody in the town, but they've retained services from Signal Polling Company, and they're going to do a representative profile of the community, trying to get the most number of respondents over certain questions to see what's preferred. I think the general questions, they're still looking to develop them, are pretty much given the pros and cons of the selection that they made, which was the consolidation of a school at Cutler, but also give 3 or 4 other selections or areas that they did look at. So there's a meeting, I believe, tomorrow that the subcommittee is having. They're developing the questions. I think that vehicle is going to go out. It's going to be text, phone calls, mailings. But really, it's a company that focuses and knows the profile of Massachusetts and Hamilton-Wenham. And they're putting questions and the vehicles of how they communicate that'll get the most respondents. So I know a lot of people are interested in that. I know there was even some discussions about, Winthrop coming off the table. I want to make sure that was clear that, that wasn't driven by us. But that was actually brought up in the comments again by a citizen. But look for that survey that's coming out. Again, it's representative. It's not the entire community.
Nothing for me. Thanks.
Rosie?
So I've just introduced myself to all my new liaison positions. I haven't been to any of them yet except for the COA, and I'll just again reiterate how well the COA is doing. Lots of interest today. There was a lunch and learn with 2 grannies on the road, and actually, so they came and gave a presentation. It was very uplifting and encouraging. Other than that, I will be hooking up with the ZBA and the Conservation Commission and that other boards that I'm assigned to next week.
I'm good right now, nothing to add.
Just quickly, I'll say, to reiterate, there has continued to be a lot of conversation around 3A. I know there's continued private citizens meetings, and obviously we encourage ongoing information sharing. And we have begun the process to kick off our engagement with UTIL. And, we have done the best that we can to include folks who have raised their hands through emails to the town, to Joe, to whomever in that process. We've gotten I've seen a couple of sort of misinformed posts online, and even some emails we've gotten, asking if this is something that's happening sort of under the cover of darkness, and it is not. We have been multiple times asked folks to please let us know if they would like to be included, and folks who have asked to be included have been included, and we've tried to create a group that is a representative sample of folks who are pro, con, ambivalent, live near, live far, affected and unaffected. And so there's certainly nothing there that hasn't been presented to the public. But again, if you would like to be involved in the process in any way, we continue to encourage folks to email us, and we can make sure that you have the information that you need to be involved.
Can I just add something to that?
Please.
So the group that's been put together, and it's been referred to as an advisory committee, but it's really kind of just a stakeholder engagement, and it was the suggestion of UTIL to identify people, and we liked the idea, so we worked to identify people that could just give them some of their time, let them inform UTIL about the community and what the community's needs and wants are, and get as many different voices into that conversation as possible. There are also going to be 2 very large-scale public engagements and then surveys and other things for UTIL to continue to get as much feedback. This group is not, quote-unquote, driving the process. They don't make any decisions. Their role is to inform UTIL about the community, what it is they love about the community, what it is they'd like to see protected, and what it is that they'd like to see, particularly the town center, evolve into over a course of many, many years. the process for passing zoning still goes through the planning board. It's not driven by this process, but 2 members of the planning board are part of this process because ultimately, if any zoning is going to be proposed, it's going to be proposed by the zoning board, proposed by the planning board and then voted on at town meeting. So again, this is not an effort to separate people out. It's actually intentionally done to bring people into the process and get as much input as possible. And we'll be going over all that again on June 12th. So I hope people are able to make it or at least log in through Zoom and participate that way.
And as always, nothing has changed. Nothing having to do with downtown or 3A happens without the vote of the town. Cool. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda. There's only one item, approving the minutes of April 22nd, 2024 Select Board meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the minutes of April 22nd in the consent agenda.
Second?
Second by Rosie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, moving right along. The first item of business today is to approve a request from the Hamilton Wyndham Regional High School to allow graduate flags along Bay Road.
And Brian is here to talk about that.
It doesn't need to, let's just approve it.
I know, I was like,
Let Brian speak. My nephew's graduating, so that's very exciting.
all right, Brian, take it away.
Okay, thanks for having me here tonight. So one thing we'd like to do this year is through both Hamilton and Wenham place a sign for each graduate going down 1A, with their name and a picture, just as a way to celebrate the kids. And I think it would be it's just a nice, I think, community building event because everybody who's driving down 1A is going to get a chance to see that. So that's the ask. It's, right around 117 or so signs. And the idea would be to place them up that week of graduation, after Memorial Day, of course, and then leave them up and get them down, after the graduation ceremony is over, probably early the following week.
Are these like yard signs?
Yes, they're 18 by 24. I mean, they're the same things you see all over the place.
I mean, I think that's delightful and super fun.
I make a motion that we approve the a request from Hamilton Wyndham Regional High School to allow graduate flags along Bay Road for the week of May 31st until after the Monday after graduation.
Second that.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me just amend that. When did you want to put it up? What date? Like the 28th?
So yeah, anytime after Memorial Day, really.
28th
Awesome.
until the week after.
Got a
Second
second
that.
from Bill?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
All right.
Brian.
Great idea, Brian. And
Yeah, thanks. Could I ask just one question? If that's okay. I think I had requested that they be in the public way. What is the definition of the public way?
The area of the sidewalk, the grassy area right next to the curb along Bay Road is the public way. So you can put it in along there. It'd probably be better, as much as possible, to be on what we refer to as the southbound side, because there's a lot more of that on that side from the town center out to the high school.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room in front of that grassy area in front of the COA that
Yeah,
we could
yeah,
put.
you can do some there as well, and just be careful, there are some places where there's like some private property and stone walls and stuff that come right up. So some of those
Okay.
folks may not want you, or they may feel like putting a sign in front of those houses would tell people that that's where that graduate lives, and they don't. So just
Yeah.
try to be as much as possible publicly, obviously publicly spaced
Yeah.
land.
Okay. So it's just that grassy area between the sidewalk
And the curb.
and the
street,
road.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And the curb. Okay. Got it. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Brian.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right, next up is reviewing the project priorities and ARPA funding request for Patton Park and sidewalk improvements. So this is the,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
I have to ask, can I ask the select board to table this, and I can explain why?
It's my favorite when someone does that.
The reason I'd ask for table, we do need to allocate this funding before the end of December. That said, as you know, we have a very large bid out on the town hall project right now. We have identified that just a little over $6 million that could handle that. Our concern is that if it comes in a little bit over, we have nothing else. If we wait until the bids are open at the end of June, my guess is we're not gonna have to tap this, but after a long conversation with our DPW director and the architects, we thought, well, maybe we just ask the board to wait until the first week of July, and with any luck, we don't have to use any of this money for that, but to cut off a funding source, to close a small gap, when we can just wait a month and a half and we'll probably be in better shape, I'd ask to table this until July.
I think anyone here who's ever done a construction project
So,
agrees.
so Joe, I think that's fine. I only had one question then for you, is that, this was sort of part of my ask, was not just identify money, but identify what the money was spent on.
Yep.
Is there anything we want to go over in terms of the proposal, in terms of the different items, or we just want to table the whole thing and talk about it when we know what money we have?
It's very, so did you look at the last meeting's agenda?
So you went-
There's-
Yeah,
There's a super comprehensive,
I see that, but is there anything we need to talk about? No, I saw there's a super comprehensive, now my question, is there anything that's still open on it, or we agree with everything that's
I
on
think
here?
the question was, what amount will we have and where we want to put it? So I think that might depend on
Yeah, if we
town
have-
hall.
yeah, right.
Because if we only have 200 instead of 500, does that change our priority?
No, I like the detail that this has, and I just want to know if you want any input on this detail, or you think you have enough right now.
And I think ultimately the board is going to look at it and make a vote. If you want to send some feedback to me and Tim over the next couple of weeks, that'd be fine as well. I think that, I'm honestly super optimistic that public bids have been coming in lower than people expected them to, including the athletic fields. The turf fields came in lower. They're going to be able to do the whole project. They didn't think that 6 months ago that was going to happen. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but out of an abundance of caution, I want to just have this available in case we need to have it. I'm hoping we don't have to, and then we can come back in July, and you guys can have a great conversation about which parts of the Patton Park and sidewalk master plan you want us to use that money for. And then we can get under contract and get going gangbusters right after that. But we don't want to cut off a funding source that we might need to help close a small gap.
Agreed. So let's table, so when someone has to officially say, let's table it?
Yeah, just say table.
Table it.
So tabled. Delightful. Are any of us worried about the sound that this makes when you talk? No?
Someone's complaining online.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Jack, did you want to say something?
I am getting feedback that the select board, if you try to join the meeting, are there 2 Zoom links online and people are joining the executive session one?
Executive session one should not have been publicized.
Oh,
We
was it?
didn't post that one.
So
So
they're
I mean-
getting the following message that the select board is in an executive session, waiting for host to start the meeting.
All these people dialed in based on,
Yeah, that's why I wondered if
they're
there were.
on the executive
no, they
session.
couldn't be, no, because I got off of that.
Brian
Oh,
dialed in
I
and
mean,
got us.
people who
There's
are trying
Cory.
to
All right.
join and don't realize that we're on the regular session now.
Yeah, but they shouldn't have the Zoom link for this executive session,
I
right?
know, they shouldn't, I agree.
All right. It was Corey, so he's here, so we don't have to worry about it. We're gonna go with user error there.
Okay.
We love you. All right, so the next is reviewing a request, whoa.
Why don't you send Joe an email?
Executive session was posted,
The-
Why don't you
the
send
Zoom
Ju-
was posted?
Zoom link, yeah.
Okay, so
I think if there, we're tabling it, but if you have questions and you
came. I
came
think
here,
we
can you
should.
ask, right?
Yeah, they're fine. Yeah, you came, you're here?
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
Jack Davis, also speaking for my wife, Robin Davis, and just some questions about the, and I realize these are non-ARPA related questions, but our concern was about the bandstand and the needed renovations for that in Patton Park, and also the issue of the Railroad Avenue sidewalks. But maybe Joe can answer this question. Does the DPW have any line item money for just regular maintenance? Because the bandstand, there's rotten wood, peeling paint, and so forth. We've talked to you about this. Any?
And the bandstand was recently hit with some really pretty gross vandalism as well. There's some bad graffiti and stuff that had to be cleaned off of it. We have some budget in DPW for that. I think the feeling is that the structure is in need of enough repair that it's beyond what we could do with just maintenance. But I'll talk to Tim again about trying to make it as functional as possible until the select board decides what they want to focus on.
Okay, right, and then realize that the ARPA funding didn't touch the Railroad Avenue sidewalks, but, just citizens' opinion that I think the improvement of Railroad Avenue in terms of the uneven sidewalks and also I think the very unaesthetic spray painting there doesn't reflect well on the town, just personal opinion, so just.
You talking about the full stretch of Railroad or just the downtown stretch to Willow?
Just the downtown stretch in front of the post office and so forth, a little uneven. I think it's even sort of a tripping hazard someplace, as well as being sort of ugly and having a third world appearance. But anyway, thank you. That's just a concern to be noted.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Jack.
All right. Next up is reviewing a request for a citizen-led effort to create a bus shelter for students at Forest Street and Gregory Island Road. And I believe we are joined
Eric Memo. There he
by
is.
Eric to talk about it. And just to kick things off, Eric can tell us a little bit more about sort of the project's involvement. But ultimately, this is, as it says, a private citizen, who is offering to bring the resources and build to do this for students that are standing in the rain and snow. So, Eric, I'll hand it over to you to tell us a little bit about what you're thinking.
Sure. Eric Memo, 3 Beach Street in South Hamilton. Thank you for this meeting. About 3 years ago, there was an effort by the town to build a bike rack on the corner of Forest and Gregory Island Road. In our small community down on Chabaco Lake, there are quite a bit of kids that get on the bus there. I'm not sure the exact number, but I think it's somewhere between 10 and 20 right now. And I believe that number is going to grow in the next couple of years because a lot of new families have moved in and have children under the age of, or between the age of 3 and 5 or 3 and 4. Next to the spot that the bike rack is, there is another open area that is somewhat almost level, directly adjacent to it. I submitted plans and drawings to add an official bus stop right next to it. It's a concrete pad is what I proposed. I believe it was 12 by 20. And then I would put a pergola on top of it, giving it a shelter. And I was planning on putting some solar lighting because half of the year it's dark when the kids get out to the bus. And I thought it would complement the bike rack itself. I plan on doing all this through Volunteers for Effort. I am a licensed general contractor in the state of Massachusetts. So I'd run it under my license and work with the building department for permitting. The DPW did offer some resources as far as helping to prepare the site. We have to just clear out some vegetation. And in my drawing, I believe I have approximately 14 footings to support the structure, and then about 40 tons of gravel to build the base for the concrete pad to be placed on. And that is what we proposed, and we were hoping the town would look for approval. My goal is to acquire the funding hopefully by the end of July and perform the project in August before the school season starts up in September.
And included in your packets was a donation and license agreement that was drafted by KP Law. Eric has completed that agreement, as well as providing the necessary insurance and release of liability documents that were recommended by KP Law. And again, as he said, this is no financial impact to the town. He built it with the money he raises and the volunteers that assist him in it, and then we'd have something there that the community and that part of the town could benefit from.
So 100% for it. I just had a couple questions, but I think it's great, and thank you very much. You mentioned plans, Joe. I didn't see the plan, so.
Yeah, so the plans were submitted to the building
Okay.
commissioner, who would have to review them and make sure that they were sufficient. I think Rich thought they may have been a little over-designed, but definitely thought that they'd suffice for what, for that.
So it makes sense for that spot and that size, and.
Yep.
And did Tim look at it too?
Yeah, as Eric said, Tim and Pete Cobb, actually Pete Cobb spoke to Eric about, using some town labor to just clear the site and remove the
Yeah.
vegetation, make it ready for, prepare it for the construction, and then Eric would take over.
Okay. So as long as our DPW and our building commissioner looked at it, I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and as far as, oh, sorry, I
No,
didn't
no.
mean to interrupt.
no, go ahead.
As far as the plans and drawings, once I get the town's approval, I will work side by side with the building inspector and make sure it's designed and approved to what he wants as far as building code and what needs to be done.
So that was my again, I echo Bill's sentiments. I think this is a great idea, and I love to see it come together. I just have questions about like precedent and property and folks building things, and like, if we say yes to this, this does not in any way set precedent for, I was just thinking, like, when it came up on the agenda, people were like, oh, that would be so fun to build a bus stop near my house. And I was like, boop, 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 boop.
So I think KP Law's assessment of that question, because I asked the same question, is that the town select board at any time can choose to accept a donation based on the specific circumstances in which the donation's offered, or you can choose to decline it. And just accepting a donation in this instance doesn't necessarily, require you to accept one somewhere else later on if the select board at the time doesn't feel that it's in the town's best interest to do so.
And whose property is it?
It's town-owned property.
So that was my other question, though, allowing,
It's an unbuildable lot. It's like a narrow strip of, just overgrown. We did clean it up and put the bike rack in and a couple of stones to keep people from driving onto it, but it's largely just a vegetated small lot that is not buildable for anything other than something like this.
I just add, I think it's a great idea, Eric. Since it is town property, we were just talking about the gazebo at Patton. What about upkeep down the road, any liability if the covering were to fall, or how does that get maintained so it's safe?
So, I mean, I think that's something the town will have to look at in the future. We own the property, we're allowing them to build it, so if it needs to be refreshed once in a while, we'll have to have that as part of our DPW budget, and something that we'll look at. But we've been sort of doing that as far as trimming the grass around the bike rack and stuff a couple times a summer, just to make sure it doesn't get overgrown and look and run down. Yes, it would add, half-hour maintenance every summer to the DPW, making sure everything there looks good right before school starts. But I don't think it doesn't seem like
But if
Tim's always worried
But
about.
if the
creating-
material selections could be a low-maintenance material selections,
Yeah.
that would be better.
Right.
So that's why I was curious about the plan, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, gentlemen. I'm building this for the town, and there was no way I plan on doing any low maintenance build on this. My name is on this, and I plan on having all the children show up on concrete day to put their handprints on it. So I will be building everything out of pressure treated that is required, and I plan for this build to be maintenance free for at least 30 years. I take pride in my work, and if I'm donating something to the town, trust me, it will not be done half in any manner.
That's great. No, thank you. And that was my comment, to build something that was low, it sounds like you're gonna build something that's gonna be very sturdy and resilient, so thank you for that.
So Eric.
You're welcome.
Eric, I have a couple of questions. It's going to be a solid roof. I think of a pergola could be just a sort of a rutted roof, but you're going to do a solid roof, and will there be a back and sides on it?
Well, so for safety reasons, I like to do, like I said, it's a shed style roof. So it's higher in the front than it is in the back. That way all the water and snow and ice all fall to the back. So the front is open. As far as putting sides on it, I don't want to put sides on it just for safety reasons, for visuals, so when kids are inside, or I don't want to block it off so anyone can hide inside and then run out into the street. But I did find another resource avenue that actually has a very, I actually just put it on my home, and it's a very heavy-duty clear plastic. And it's made for like, almost rated, I think it's 120 mile an hour winds, and it has a zipper system. And if I can do it within the budget, I would like to have permission to install that because it is transparent sides. And that would actually keep the entire inside wind-free and free from snow and rain and anything else like that. But it's 100% transparent and clear. But I'm not sure if I'm going to raise enough money to provide that the first year. That may be something we have to add on afterwards. But I do plan on having the sides open visually all the way around.
If people want to donate to this, what's the best way for them to do that?
So once we get this approval, I have a team that is going to build a Facebook page, and we'll have the donation process all set up through that, and then we'll be able to link it to any other Facebooks that already exist for the town. And then I also have 30 vendors that said we can post the flyer around the town as well to help raise funds as well.
Everybody's gonna want one of these. Every stop.
As you said, first off, the big thing here is you have unused town land that's too small to sell or use otherwise. I'm not sure, we own a lot of small unused parcels, but I don't know if we own enough to have this really promulgated throughout the communities.
I think it's nice. I see kids standing there freezing in the rain and the snow a lot, so I think this is a great donation, Eric.
So it doesn't say, it says review request, not vote. So are we voting tonight,
You know,
Joe?
I think you need to vote, and once you vote, we can have you sign.
I'll make a motion to approve the citizen-led effort to create a bus shelter for students at Forest Street and Gregory Island Road per the application as submitted by Eric Mimo.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, thank
All
you.
right, you have unanimous aye. Go forth.
Go raise some money.
Go raise some money.
Thank you very much. I'm looking very forward to this summer.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
What a great donation. That's really nice.
All right. The next topic is a request by private citizens to use the COA for a public information sharing session. And we decided to add this to the agenda for two reasons. I think Courtney Ashwood and a couple of other folks had a 3A information session at the Legion a couple weeks ago. It was very well attended, and I think there was a lot of interest and curiosity, and they have asked to host a second session at the COA. We do not currently have a policy around the use of the COA for public meetings of that size. We've sort of approved them on an ad hoc basis. The DTC had a meeting there a few weeks ago. So I think there is sort of a later item to maybe put together a policy of some kind. I think the only thing we wanted to discuss is because it's 3A and because it's at a Hamilton public space, being very clear that this is not a town-endorsed or town-led information session. I think this particular meeting, I think there's an attorney from Rockport and a couple of other experts that are there, all super respected and whatever, but the perspective of this group is sort of leaning towards no on 3A. And since we're trying to keep the public discourse more open, I think we just have to be careful.
So just so you know, they have withdrawn their request. We were trying to get through this process, and they wanted to make sure that they had a site, so they located another site. I told them, let me know in the future. I would like to, in your packets, there were some drafts of facilities use documents that we'd like to, get your input on. We don't have to go through it extensively tonight, but if you could offer me any suggestions you have. It's very much similar to the facilities use documents that we use for the Patent Homestead. It was kind of drafted based on those and with some input from town council. Town council was willing to draft this whole separate document if you want, but we were trying to get this turned around quickly so that we could offer it to Courtney and her folks, but as I said, they withdrew. I know the town Democratic Committee is also looking to use it for an upcoming meeting, so we would like to have a standardized way for people to request it and then have it approved. Years ago, the former COA director had talked about wanting a policy through the COA, but they never got it done. So we need to find a way to just have some kind of a.
Is there a list of sort of areas, like locations of town you can seek to use for events?
So,
Can you use this room? Can you
So the,
Is-
the Hamilton Wenham Library has its own policy for use of this room, and there's a whole process that is managed through the library. It has nothing to do with us.
Okay,
The only real rooms for us would be the new memorial room when the town hall's redone and the council on aging room. And, you know, so we would, you know, I would think that when we reopen town hall, we'll want a policy for that, and we'll probably try to have it mirror the policy that we're putting in place. It's just something that even though I've been here 5.5 years, we've just never had anybody ask. It's, the only thing I can remember doing, a few years ago, the Hamilton Wenham Garden Club always uses the outside area to do a plant sale. And, they got a forecast for rain, so we allowed them the last minute to just move, because they do that there every year. We just allowed them last minute to move it indoors so that, they could go forward with their fundraiser, but, and that kind of sets a precedent. You know, if you're gonna let one group use it, you have to make it available, but we should have a policy around that, or at least standardized form, so. Happy to draft a whole policy, happy to take your feedback on the, draft documents that we put in front of you. There is no urgency to do it tonight, but, if you wanna get back, let me know. Do you want me to have a policy drafted? Do you wanna just go forward with the documents that we've drafted? Do you wanna make changes to those documents? We'll get it ready for you to vote on at a future meeting.
I also, had a, I had a question too around Hamilton residents versus Wenham versus anyone. I mean, I think in the case of the Hamilton Wenham Garden Club, it's a Hamilton Wenham. In the case of the DTC, it's a Democratic, it's town specific. And not that you can't just have a Hamilton resident put in the request, but it just struck me that I think Courtney is technically Wenham. And so that should just be part of our thought, is like, it may be the case as any person, anywhere, anytime, but I didn't know if it needed to be town specific.
I think that's up to the board.
And I don't know what the,
You know, COA is a very intimate place. There's a lot of love and pride that goes on in there. If I were organizing this, I would want a town resident. I would want it to be town. I don't know, do we think it's okay to have Wenham too? Probably, but I definitely think we should entrust our wonderful senior center to just local folks, is my opinion.
yeah.
Speaking as the chair of the COA.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a good point for just, I don't think we're looking to draft a policy tonight, correct? But as we do, you know, like starting there, that it needs to be a local event for mostly local attendees.
Yep, right. I mean, best case scenario, it's a location that we should leverage and use since we have it, but worst case scenario is we don't want to misuse it, we don't want to have the wrong events there or the wrong sort of outcome, so we just have to think about that in the policy.
Yeah, and I like the fact that if you're going to open it to one, you open it to everybody with the same expectations. I like that we may or may not require an independent insurance contract. I don't know, does the town have something like that available, and there could just be a rider?
Generally, the town wouldn't look to cover private groups.
Okay.
You know, for instance, and we very consciously made an insurance rider part of, you know, the use of the patent homestead.
Right.
It's a little bit of a lift, but because you have to contact a company, but they're usually like $100, $125 to get for the day, and lots of companies offer those policies. And it protects us, so if they take out that policy and something happens while they're there, it protects them too, because then they don't have to pay for it out of pocket.
Right.
We're not stuck in litigation with a resident, they're trying to get back money to fix something that they accidentally broke.
Right.
So it might actually make sense to have that, and I think that, you know, a little less likely with something going on at the Council on Aging than maybe at a patent homestead when you've got an event or something, but in any case, we just want to protect the town's asset, and our residents who might be looking to use this facility said having the insurance keeps them from having to dig in their own pocket if something goes wrong.
I think that makes sense. I'll just ask just a parallel question. While the town hall is at the patent homestead, that's not available for public use right now?
Internal rentals are really difficult, but we are trying to do some outdoor things that we can,
Right, okay.
and we're
Yeah.
gonna try to investigate a couple of other things. So for instance, Thursday night will be the first music series out there. unfortunately, every time Holly schedules a music series, we wind up rain, and right now there's threat of showers Thursday night on the forecast, so.
It's only Monday, you never know. This is New England.
It's New England, don't like the weather, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like someone to report back on the tick situation.
What?
The ticks. That's what I'm scared of. Outside. Has anybody mowed their lawn yet this year? Their ticks are.
It's no
ticks
mow May.
everywhere.
Excuse me.
It is no mow May. I know.
It's no mow May.
We're no mowing one side. We're mowing the other side.
My wife keeps wanting me to mow the grass down the Swampscott, I keep saying, it's no mow May.
It's
She's
no
like-
mow May.
She's like, I didn't sign up for that, I'm like, well,
Like,
I'm not running the lawnmower.
I'm here for the pollinators.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think if you want to come up with a draft,
So-
that would be a good starting point.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and
We'll
it
do that.
sounds like the request has been removed, and I think, but again, if they came back, I think we don't have grounds to say no
Yeah.
currently, but we should try to adopt something that makes sense.
I agree. And if everybody thinks this is okay, did our town council think this was okay, Joe? So we don't, I mean,
They drafted what we templated it off, so like I said, I'll run that by them as well as
Okay.
pull together some, just a couple paragraphs of policy language to accompany this, and then bring it all to you at a future meeting,
yeah.
the end of June or early July or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. We should get it done sooner rather than later, just in case we don't have a lot of facilities available.
Right.
So I think it's a great idea.
All right, the next is the discuss the need for a one-page statement about various proposals and projects. So a resident had sent an email, I think one of the themes of the last couple of weeks has obviously been like distribution of information, centralization of information, how can people get involved, where do they go, blah, blah, blah. And so we talked about putting together a literal one-pager on 8.5 by 11 paper that literally lists the large initiatives in town and basically says, here's the progress of this thing, here's how you participate in this thing, and here's the resource for how you can access information on this thing. It is a completely non-biased, non-partisan, it's literally, like 133 is in this state, this is what we're waiting for. The school building project, this is where we are, here's where you get information, here's a link to the website. 3A, here's the process, here's where we are, here's where we get the website. And then we would do a mail drop, so directly in mailboxes, no postage. We would just have the postal carrier drop them into all the mailboxes in Hamilton. It's a flat fee.
It's a flat fee, yeah. It's kind of what we do with the town warrant now.
Yeah.
That warrant card that we send out that has a QR code, that's what we're doing with that too.
Well, that's fun. I think that's a great
How-
idea, more information.
How often do you do it?
Well, we're just gonna do it this one time first. It's about $700, right, to do the drop?
Yeah, I have to look at
ish.
it, yeah.
And then the cost of just printing, but again, we're thinking just like an easy one pager.
We can print them out at town hall, so. And, I was thinking about doing a similar type of mailing to make sure everybody knows about the June 12th event.
Yep.
Again, June 12th event, everybody, June 12th event, please
Yep.
come. Please
Which we can actually
participate.
put at the bottom of this one too,
Yeah,
like
we can-
for,
yeah. Yep.
and that way we can put a link to sign up for the town manager report. We can put a link to the website for the school building project. We can put a forthcoming, coming soon for the 3A, and then any, related information about sort of 133. Don't want to overdo it. We want it to be simple, but we want people to finally have access to an index of where they can find these links. So the first thing was just to let y'all know that this was something that we were going to be putting together. We want to approve something next meeting because in order for us to get it out before the June 12th meeting, we would need to have some approval in our next select board meeting, or we won't have time. But as far as topics, I think the ones that we have on there, the 3A zoning, the school building project, Gordon Conwell, 133, and was there another
Yeah, I feel like there was, but, I
big one that we were thinking of?
feel like there was, but no, I can't remember what it was, hold on,
But just wanted to check and make sure that those felt like the right things to put on there.
Yeah, who's gonna write the statements?
I'll draft it for you.
Joe was gonna draft, and then I was actually thinking Rosie,
Oh, town center and form-based code was.
yeah, he was gonna send it to me, and I was thinking you and I could editorialize his draft and then have that ready for the next meeting.
I'd love to.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
And again, I'm literally hoping like 2 sentences for each,
Yeah.
just to sort of say like, this is what we are. And mostly just to direct people to the information that they have, and then get more people to sign up for the town manager's report. Because it shocked me how many people still don't know about
Well,
it.
and the town manager report, and also just let us know how you prefer to get your information. Like, are there things that we can do to reach more people? That helps us on that end, so.
It's great. Also, we were gonna do link to the town Facebook page, which I know is not for everybody. And there was one other. Anyway, we'll draft something shortly, and Rosie and I will editorialize and bring it back for approval.
I'll work on a lot of it tomorrow.
Okay. So again, that's progress towards communication. I love
That's great.
Woo.
Great. Yeah, really good idea.
It's a great idea.
And then the next item is discussing the roles of liaisons and boards and committees. I think there's a code of conduct in our packets. This noise. We only brought this up because obviously not just us, but all boards and committees, there's a lot of conversation that happens online. There's a lot of conversation that happens when some of us visit other meetings. And KP Law had done a nice job of reminding us that if you speak, you need to be very clear that you're speaking on your behalf of yourself as a personal citizen. You are not speaking on behalf of the board. And if you do speak on behalf of the board, it has to be because of an explicit designation by the board to speak on behalf of the board with a specific agenda or item. And I think this is just important because, we've all sort of seen conversations that are happening where people say, well, this is, I think this, I think that, and then that gets sort of proliferated as like the board had said X or Y or Z. And so just a super stark reminder that, if you show up at a school board meeting or a FinCom meeting, or if you talk online, we should all just be saying, as a private citizen or as a citizen, this is my perspective. And if you speak as a citizen at anything, do not introduce yourself as a member of the select board unless you are there to speak on behalf of the select board. Otherwise, that introduction is sort of considered an authorization of speaking on behalf of the board.
It's suggestive that you're speaking on behalf of the board.
Any questions?
It's good.
Run amok, 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 amok. All right.
It really is a liaison, though. We're there just to be a conduit, not inform, but, kind of just.
Yeah.
Because I think by definition, if you say I'm the liaison, then people think you're speaking on behalf of the board.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's like where it comes down to like, if I think the 3A is like a really good one. Like Rosie's there to listen, right? I mean, I'm just using this example because it's top of mind. But she can't say anything about our perspective unless we as a board have said, this is the perspective we have on 3A, and we would like to offer our official perspective for the board to consider.
Right.
Just because we can get in hot water if we as liaisons, or you at the school board meeting saying, well, I think consolidating is a hell of an idea. Was that a good bill? Because then we get in legal hot water because our liaison speaking on behalf of the board said that it was a hell of an idea. So,
Yeah, agree.
Do you know what's really funny is my first meeting is at the ZBA next week, and of course, what did I get in the mail? My very next door neighbor is putting in a request to have an addition put on. So that'll be a case where I identify myself as an abutter, right?
As an
And
abutter,
not
right.
anything else.
There you go.
Question for on that comment, which I think I agree with. My question is that a lot of times, because I thought the generous would be about something else. A lot of times, people sort of ask us, "What's the select board's opinion on this or that?" And for instance, like with the school, like it never came to us, so we never really had to make an opinion or got to make an opinion. And I'm wondering if it would make sense at some point for us to have an opinion or a consensus, because people look to us for that type of thing. And we actually did it at the end of Sean's term when we actually voted to extend the lease. So it was our small way of saying, hey, although we're not involved in the project or the process, and we don't get to vote on it, we want the community to know that as a select board, we're in favor of it 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, that we want to extend the lease on Cutler. So I'm just thinking that sometimes it makes sense for us, as even when like the project on Chabaco, right? We didn't ever comment on it. So sometimes like this, we like to stay in our lane, but sometimes it might be important for us to have an opinion out there, just so people know where we stand on it.
Yeah.
Just something to think about.
No, I agree. I think, I'm just so sorry you weren't here for our meeting this time. I mean, I think the school one is such an interesting one because, I mean, I've said this a lot, like, my personal opinion as a parent and a resident is not necessarily my public opinion as a arbiter of budget and funds and equity and resources. Like,
Right.
those two things actually sit a little in opposition, actually, on this project. And I've struggled a lot with that publicly about how to talk about that what I think is right for the whole is not necessarily what I believe is right for the individual.
Right, yeah, and it makes sense.
And
Right,
I've had to sort
fair.
of sit that one out, and my only comments to people have just been like, you know, I have to trust the process of the group that has been designated to that process to show us the information that's relative, but I don't know if we want to have a further, or if we could even come to a consensus as a board around what our perspective is.
Yeah, if anything, though, I think especially if we're sending out one pager with statements in big topic areas, we should have we should all know and be consistent about what's been done about it. Just like there was confusion on what we voted on for extension of leases and timeframes, we should have a cheat sheet on everything that goes out on the one pager that says, here's things we've spoke about or we voted on. So we're all singing from the
Yeah,
same
agreed.
sheet.
So we have an official
Yeah.
position, and then when we designate ourselves as private citizens, we
Right, but
can.
you can reiterate,
Right, this is
We
what the
voted this
board
on this
believes,
day.
yeah,
Look and-
yeah.
but-
Yeah.
I think that's helpful backup.
But just, isn't that one-page statement just sort of informational?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
Fact,
wouldn't go on the
yeah.
one
Yeah.
pager, but we would always have a backup, so if asked and we're a
I see what
liaison,
you're
we
saying,
could state,
yeah.
oh, well, we have spoke about this on this day, we
Right,
did
right.
this, that type of thing. But not give our own opinions, here's what we did as a board.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
Well, it's an art, not a science.
And I think it's a good idea.
That's what I'm learning. Okay, the last big,
Any other, discussion on, expectations of the liaison role, on what you'd like to hear back at meetings, or what we should all be? Because a lot of times we punt a little bit and others, and that's okay, I do the same. I'm just wondering if,
my perspective on that would, I mean, some liaison roles are sweeter and softer than others. I think the most comments that I've heard consistently, and I'm sure it's the same for y'all, is the lack of connective tissue that people feel between initiatives whereby the select board could, though not our purview, could be some of that connective tissue. And so I think as long as we're having robust conversation in our sort of top of the hour, that it's less about like reporting back, like I talked to so-and-so on Friday and he wants to know if we have orange cones. It's more saying like, this thing dovetails with this thing, and are we having a transparent conversation, and is that information getting back to the other boards? Because I think that's where I'm hearing the most sort of pushback is like, how are y'all not connecting these dots? And it's because the process does not encourage dot connecting.
So, different boards have different statutory authorities. On the one hand, you want to be connected and know what each other are doing, but on the other hand, people get very upset or thinking that you're trying to force an outcome,
Yeah.
or think that, oh, so you're making these decisions without public input. So it's important to let the public processes play out the way they're supposed to. The planning board has its authority, the ZBA has its authority, the select board certainly has its authority. It's important for everybody to be talking and aware of what each other is doing, but it becomes really sticky if the select board wants to start recommending things. It's not something we've done a lot of here, and I don't think it's necessarily something we want to do. But even just saying, oh, we think this, leads people to think that you are trying to.
So, but part of that is when, in our roles as liaisons, I think other than just sitting there, we might have questions from time to time. So I don't think that necessarily will reflect a position, but it will reflect a thought process, right? We're just asking questions about it.
Yeah, I think asking questions makes all the sense in the world. It's particularly be able to inform the rest of the board here about what's going on at another board or committee.
I mean, I agree, and I think gathering the most information that you can in the broadest possible sense, I think is, the challenge I think comes where, and we all have biases towards certain things, like we can't lead the witness.
Yeah, I think it's none of our business. My opinion is when I'm as a liaison to something, the COA is a little bit different, But the other entities, like, I think about the Concom and the ZBA, I mean, I'm there as a, just taking the information and asking questions. Yeah, I wouldn't want to, yeah, I will be very careful about not overstepping. I'm just there to collect information is the way I think of it.
Or if you see that they're missing information, I think that's the other thing to bring back, that like, you know, the ZBA was talking about this, but I don't think they know that this thing's happening over here. And I think those are the connective tissues that, especially with the ZBA coming up, there's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there is. So it'll be interesting and a great learning experience. I'm very excited to be part of it.
Let me know how that addition goes.
Yeah, exactly. I thought you knew about this a while ago.
I had no idea that. That's great.
That's
They're lovely neighbors. I'm thinking, but do I want this? How much? So I'm looking out my bedroom window and sort of trying to anticipate how large this addition is going to be. So I'm just going to go knock on their door and say, "What are you thinking?" So I'll be all up to snuff.
All right, the last juicy topic is the regional school district agreement, priorities and processes. And as y'all know, when I do agenda setting, I like to time how long each of these things is gonna take. And Joe assured me that this last item was not going to be a chunky.
I feel like assured you is maybe a little bit.
It may be a little heavy-handed, but we're not here to finalize anything. This is about reopening the regional school agreement and deciding what it is that we want to focus on within that renegotiation.
Can I set the table for you? for a moment?
Please.
All right. So, obviously, the Hamilton Select Board's been working to get this agreement reopened for several years. Finally, the Wenham Select Board and the school district have agreed to reopen. There's been some back channel discussion between the administrators, the superintendent, myself, the town administrator, and Wenham, as well as the chairs of the different governing bodies, about what's the best process for getting our priorities on the table so that we all know what we're talking about and moving that forward with the attorneys on each side. KP Law has already been disclosures filed, so KP Law will be presenting the towns of Hamilton and Wenham jointly, and District Council will represent the district. It'll be Lauren Goldberg from KP Law will be the primary negotiator for the towns. What we want to, I think, get out of this discussion is that it's been suggested that the 5 chairs committee, which is made up of the chairs of the select board and FinCom in each town and the school committee, as well as the superintendent and the 2 town administrators, town administrators, would be a vehicle to work with the attorneys to have the negotiations of the things that come out of this discussion. So we did provide in your packets the 2 letters that were sent back, I think now 2021. I believe Bill Olson was the chair at the time when we initially initiated this, trying to get this
Bill,
off the
well
ground.
done.
And so that outlines several things that the Hamilton Select Board at that time identified as priorities for discussing a reopened agreement. I think there'd be a couple ways to handle it, but we'd love to hear from this board, a couple years later, if there's anything in addition to these things that you want on the agenda when the 5 chairs start to meet. And then the process would be, if you all agree, to move things through the 5 chairs, and then this board would have the opportunity to vote as we get closer and we have iterations of new draft agreements and things like that.
So are you talking about items that we would
Yes.
like? Okay, yes.
And again, I think Caroline's point was that we don't necessarily have to go through the whole list tonight, but you could email her, you can email me, you could suggest some things now if you have them on top of mind, and we'll write them down, but we want to make sure that we're presenting our attorneys with everything that we think should be discussed when we set that first meeting.
Well, I can think of 2 things off the top of my head that
Okay.
are really burning issues. And the first is that when they come to town meeting and they ask us to allocate money for X, we expect that X money will be utilized for X and not diverted into something else. That has been a huge problem.
Talking capital or operating expense? Because I think they just vote a bottom line, right?
The bottom line budget,
Right.
but the
Yeah.
problem is they argue for certain things that may or may not happen because it's a bottom line budget.
Right.
And that's state law, I mean, we can ask, but I don't, just, you know, in the interest of driving a hard bargain, we can ask, but I think the district's gonna say, state law says I don't have to do that, so why would I tell you
Well,
that
we
I'll do
don't
that?
have to approve the budget either, right?
Well,
I mean,
unfortunately, we always know how that works, so.
hard bargaining, I mean, you know, the reality is we want to provide the schools with what it needs, but it's unfair to taxpayers to consistently have designated funds, what they consider designated funds, not utilized for the item. So that's,
I
I've got
think
it on
the
the list.
other,
Well, I think we-
also remember the stabilization fund that was passed last year, that now means that that money doesn't even come back to the town.
right, and only the school committee decides that, and that, in not just my opinion, but in a lot of people's opinion, to use that funding for the turf fields when it is known that the high school needs a new roof. That's not good use of taxpayer money, and it's sort of an arbitrary ability for them to just not be responsible to the taxpayers. We're not a school system with a funding source attached. We're two towns that have a finite amount of money available, and we want to provide for the schools, but we want the schools to ante up and be financially responsible. Financially
I mean, right, but I
accountable.
mean, we only have certain levers we can pull, because town meeting voted for that fund, right? So, but-
Against the select board's
Yeah,
recommendation.
against our recommendation.
against our recommendation, we all spoke against it, right? So,
And they
but, the
voted.
one thing I did have here was in the, if you read the bullet points of the email, was talking about, the budget, and then talking about transparent mechanism for like auditing or reporting on the budget. And so that's something that we wanted to add into there. So there are 4 bullet points that we had in the letter back in, as Joe said, but, so I think, I don't know, Joe, have we addressed any of these? I mean, some of them have been organically kind of addressed, right? We've got to,
So
gotten-
some
we've
of
gotten
them.
better at some of them.
Yeah,
but-
we've had some progress
Right.
based on the working relationship between the current administration and the towns.
But it hasn't been
But
sort of
it- but
documented.
It's not in doubt in the document, so,
Right.
So the apportionment and payment of costs, that's the 3 to 5 year
yes.
Average, yeah.
enrollment average or whatever.
Yeah. It's currently a 3-year rolling
three.
average, and we've talked about wanting to smooth that out by having it be longer, 5 years or 7 years or something like that, so, that's, I think something we still wanna go to and ask about, and we're trying to get included in the new agreement. And I do think it's something the school district's open to. It's interesting, I've had less enthusiasm from the folks in Wenham I've talked to about, it. I don't know why they'd be not inclined to smooth that out, but.
And I don't know, I mean, it's not all, we provide a lot of real estate to it. I don't know if there's a way to work that into the equation as well. But I would agree with a 5-chair meeting, kind of starting with this framework of the bullets that Mr. Olson, Chair Olson had done back in 2021, and seeing what the combined entity comes back with for what the important topics are. But I think these 4 are pretty good.
Is there an item to state that somebody from the finance committee in this town, in each of the towns, should be members of the school committee? I'm sorry, I didn't read over your bullet point.
It's a very general, it says need for a transparent mechanism for regular reporting of district revenues and expenses to assure accountability to taxpayers. So that could be done through a number of ways. It could be done through FinCom, it could be done through an auditor, it could be done, but yeah, we've kind of tried to make it general to get the conversation open, but yes, I agree. There's gotta be some, whatever that mechanism is.
Yeah, I like the 5-chair meetings, you
Yeah.
know, that's a good mechanism.
5-chair meetings.
Just require so
And
X
that's
number
one of
of-
the, I mean, if we could ask that the 5-chair meetings be utilized as part of the budget process and create more transparency and earlier conversation going forward. That's what we've been doing. It's been working well. It's gotten us to better results. We haven't argued about the school budget in the last 2 years, and it's largely because we've been using those 5-chair meetings. So if we try to get that into the agreement, then it's not just a result of the people in the roles, it becomes part of the process, no matter who's in the role.
Right, exactly. And so that's a sort of binding,
If we get it into the contract, yes.
okay, right, and that's would be great,
It's been in
because that's
practice, so
exactly
it's
what
just
we
really
need.
materializing it.
Yeah. Like I said, reading this saying, hey, we actually got better at the budget conversation. We've actually done a lot of things that we but we just
Yeah.
we gotta make it, put it in a document that's signed, so that when we're not here, it still
Future
gets done.
generations.
Yeah. Well, you came back and it's still there, so that's good.
We're working on it. So when's the first 5 chairs meeting?
I think we're trying to schedule one right now. I don't have it on my calendar yet, but I think that's what we're trying to get done now that the town councils have all been approved to move forward, so.
I have a question that is not intended to sound insensitive. But when we look at cost to educate, we do it per head, but we don't look at like relative outplacement by town.
No. So I mean, the whole per pupil expenditure thing is not, that's not how the budget's formulated.
Right.
It's a way that people explain the budget on the backside after everything's been done.
Right.
So it's, I mean, I actually think it's a poor mechanism for having that conversation, because it winds up skewing the information, and you wind up saying to yourself, well, if we've only got X number of students, then we should be able to, but it's where those students are and whether or not you can, if you have enough teachers at every requisite level to address the number of students in that grade.
Right.
So it becomes more inflated than it really is in some ways.
I guess I was just thinking like the way that
tough
we
conversation.
charge back is a percentage, right? Wenham
60,
covers
roughly
X
60.
percent. But that assumes like a homogenized cost per child, right? In the way that we do it. And I was just wondering like, and I'm not suggesting this is a good idea, and I don't even know if it's legal, but I'm like, if for instance, Hamilton is 90% of outplacements and Wenham is 10, does that weigh into it all? Or vice versa, if 90% of outplacements actually came from Wenham versus, like,
I
would
don't
you
think
want to
it
get
can.
that granular in the levers, or is it actually better to keep it as a percentage-based cost?
Something we probably should raise during the conversation in the agreement and see what people think, because I think that'll be a tough one to get agreement on, but we have to have a conversation in order to move it forward.
Another option
I mean,
would be,
yeah.
what about households, instead of students? Like, every house has the opportunity to utilize it, much like police and other services the town provides. Should it be based on households versus students, or?
Yeah.
That's what the whole bullet is. How do you look at apportionment?
I think another question that's always hard to find an answer to, more transparent data about choice students. I think one of the issues is we participate in the choice program, and people are always asking, can we ask whether a child needs an IEP when they come into the school? Will they need an outplacement before they're admitted? And to my understanding, no, we do not ask that. But then the question becomes, who pays for those costs? And I don't think there's a solid answer on that, and I think that's important. If we are going to participate in the choice program, what are we paying, right? Just informational at this point.
Is there a more, I think for this conversation, like, I don't know what levers to pull because I'm not familiar enough with the agreement to know what levers there are. So I guess I'm asking, is there somebody who knows, like, I assume that Bill, when you put this first one together with these bullet points, like, those represented the levers we wanted to look at, but how would we know if there were levers that we should be pulling that we are not pulling? Because the reason we're
I
asking
think
to
it's a
reopen this
conversation with
is,
I think it's a good conversation to have with our council.
council, that's what I was thinking, like, should we go into executive session with council? Should we just talk to them off the side of our desks?
I
And
can,
this was done 3 years ago after many discussions at select board meetings.
Right.
And so it wasn't done in a vacuum, but it also wasn't done in executive session, but we sort of went through it, we all read it, we went through bullet by bullet, and
Okay.
you would be surprised when you read how antiquated it was.
It is.
And it still is, right? So that's what we did. So we all came back with ideas, and I just wrote, and then we just decided the best way to do it was just to sort of say, hey, the chair sends it to the chair, and that was the best way to start that conversation. It didn't unfortunately take, because they wanted to focus on other things at the time, but we did our due diligence to really go through it line by line.
So I guess
come up-
that's the question, like,
yeah.
you feel like you guys, you knew enough as you went through it to feel like you, like,
Right.
found the things.
Right, but that was 3 years ago, so we may have a different priority now, so we should read it again and just,
Did you get a letter back from Wenham on what they thought their levers were, or did I miss that?
No, they didn't provide a letter.
But Wenham was going through a sort of
3 years ago,
That would be good, I mean. 'cause
3
it
years
is
ago, they
reaching-
just said they didn't want to reopen the agreement.
they had
Right, they
other
did.
issues going on.
And then this time, they just said that, yeah, well, we think it's a good idea to reopen the agreement, but they didn't say what they wanted to talk about yet.
They have a vested interest here, right? I mean,
Yes, right.
I don't know if it's worth looking at other regional agreements or just speaking with KP Law, but we probably should know what the levers are.
I like this, it's a little more, it's general, but it also focuses on important issues, things that are just not even addressed in the agreement. The agreement is just so antiquated, so that's good.
We also made the decision, like, did it make sense time to rewrite the whole thing, or to just focus on four bullet, like, what was the best way to get build the app? I think right now, because of what's going on, it makes sense to rewrite the whole thing, right? And not just,
And I think council feels that way. I mean, basically what you have here is an agreement that was originally done for a regional high school in 1959, and then was amended based on adding in other grades, and then amended again when Essex was originally part of the group and then left the group. It's like, all they've done is amend a 1959 document several times and not really update it to current law, so. The method for choosing school committee members in the agreement isn't even allowed under state law. I mean, it's illegal.
Like the having to be from,
just the way they announced it, like, the registrar doesn't have to, or the clerk doesn't have to do
Under the
anything.
agreement, the clerks
that's the
in
only
either
thing that
town
we
have to get
changed,
the signed
Change it, we
petitions,
just, like, they
get
redo it.
people
Yeah.
on the ballot. They were being turned in at the school,
Yeah.
at the superintendent's office.
And nobody knew.
Corinne was able to get them to agree to share those with us,
But it's not in writing.
but it's not in writing.
okay.
Isn't it okay to agree to whatever we want to?
As
If-
long as it doesn't violate state law.
Right. I guess my question is, and we'll ask KP about this, but, I mean, if we agree to it, then how would it be violative, right, of
Well,
state law?
well, for instance, like, the thing you started off asking about
Yeah.
gets away from a bottom line budget. In 1993, Education Reform Act says the towns give districts a bottom line budget, and then the district superintendent, school committee decide how that money gets spent. And they come to you and ask you for the money, and you approve it, and then during the course of a year, if things change, they have they are granted by the state that they know better, and they should be able to make adjustments if they need to.
Yeah, they do line item transfers.
That,
Because like the five,
And that's been in place since 1993.
And then it rolls to E&D,
1993.
and then that gets certified, and we should just understand that whole process and what happens then.
because also the budget meetings that we have been having, right, they're not codified.
Yeah.
We just do those, because I think that would be
But-
part of it, is like,
So, no, the agreement does call out that they're supposed to have the big five boards meeting is a part of that. We've got them to do that twice now instead of just once.
yeah,
Because it used to be that you did it the one time, the towns went in and said what our financial challenges were, the school said, that's great, this is what we need for a budget, and they went forward, and there was never any more conversation until they showed up at town meeting. So we've had a good working relationship with the superintendent and his staff and the current school committee, and we've had multiple meetings, both with the five chairs, and then even a second meeting with all the boards that has gotten us to a better result each time.
okay, that's encouraging. So this issue about the stabilization fund, it's a lot of taxpayer money left in there last year, and I'm still very upset that that money wasn't used for the roof, the high school roof. And so my question is, if that was approved at town meeting, I understand that, but could amending that be part of the process? Like maybe we would have FinCom people involved in the decisions, because we didn't, that's, I don't know, is the stabilization fund the same thing as a budget? Would the state consider that the same thing? But that's taxpayer money that's left over at the end of the year, and we decided to put it in a stabilization fund. But it seems that maybe we were not as careful as we could have been about deciding how it comes out. And so that's my question. Could we have a little more oversight?
So, the select board and the FinCom at that time recommended to town meeting to not approve it. The school department requested it. The school department knew what the state law on stabilization funds, school department stabilization funds were, and we tried really hard to influence them to make some, you know, acquiescence to us on that. They took it to the floor of town meeting, the select board moved for unfavorable action, and town meeting voted in almost, actually, they took issue with the way the select board made the motion.
There was violence. There
and,
was violence.
and voted it in anyway, so.
Well, they
I don't-
leveraged the turf, they made it a turf field vote and not a stabilization fund vote, so we sort of were at a disadvantage.
and-
So is there room to look at that again?
Well,
in
again,
agreement?
we can talk about it,
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the
If we
big
can,
issues that was raised was the ambiguous nature of stabilization funds, is that once they're there, it takes like an act of God to get rid of them. And that was one of the reasons that we recommended against it, was that
Yeah, yeah.
it was never that we disagreed with funding the turf field. We were vehemently against a stabilization fund as a mechanism for funding the turf field because of they're relatively new, they have very little checks and balances to them. You could put up to 10% of the operating budgets of both towns into the stabilization fund without, so it was like something like $200 million can end up in that stabilization fund that we cannot do anything about.
Well, that's the issue. If the schools made up that, the allocation arrangement, why can't we try to talk to them about having finance
think we can.
people?
I think we can.
We
You know,
can.
It's not that I'm against the stabilization fund,
Just how it
but
gets
in
right.
terms of how it's allocated, I think there
So
should
it
be.
does have to go towards capital improvement costs.
Right, that's
Whatever
what
that
I
means.
meant to-
But,
and-
right, that's a very,
Yeah,
a peanut gallery over here.
Can't be,
Yeah.
it can't be used in
I think
operations.
It can't be used in operations, they can't use it for like funding of certain things, but we were told, and again, I wanna be careful, we have a good relationship with the school board and with Eric, and like, so I think we have a good faith agreement that like, once the turf field's taken care of, they would use some of those funds for, I think they talked about like HVAC, there were other projects.
There are a lot of other projects.
But I think this idea of, to your point, like codifying, can we put like a local level lens over how that money is used? I don't know.
Well, we can ask,
We can
try.
ask.
So that's sort of my point. I'm wondering, that seems like an important point of negotiation, more oversight from FinCom people. I'm not saying.
John's heart is warming. Do you see, you say FinCon and John,
Oh,
little sparkles appear on his Zoom. He's like, yes, yes.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, we actually talked about the stabilization fund in the last two budget cycles. So it was in the 5 chairs meeting, we actually spoke about it, Rosie. So we were engaged in the discussion. If you look at the 3-year trend of what's been going on with the schools, it's been very favorable to having a more conservative, more tight budget, and the superintendent has led the way. And I mentioned this at town meeting. They did a very good job of squeezing out money this past year out of the budget in a very detailed level. So the trend, Rosie, over the last 3 years has been extremely positive to be very conservative, squeeze money out they don't really need, and to reduce the excess and deficiency, the E&D portion of the budget. So I think you look at a 3-year trend and it's very positive in the direction that you're suggesting. But I think you should codify it in the agreement and just say it needs an extra level of scrutiny because there's concern. So that's my view of the last sort of 3 years.
That sounds encouraging, John. Thank you.
So to keep things moving, I know we're here at the end. It sounds like everything we're saying is roughly covered in this thing that Bill has. I think within the specificity of budget, there's also like, or a portion in payment, there's real estate, tax applications, but otherwise, unless anybody has anything additional, like it seems like between budget, transparency, a portion in payment, and committee, those are the themes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we don't know what I'm gonna bring to the table, or what the school districts want to discuss, but at least from our side, that is all more or less covered, or even in the discussion we just had tonight, so.
I do think that I would be interested to just talk to KP Law, like, as a refresher, to just say, as a town that currently holds 4 of the 5 schools and pays 60% of the cost, is there anything we need to know going into this that we are overlooking? Because it seems like there should be a basic level of funding versus then a split level of funding as opposed to just portioned out. And I'd be curious to look at other regional agreements or have a shark of a lawyer say, y'all are so silly, why didn't you think of X? Okay, does anybody have any new business?
We got a lot going on.
Never a dull moment here on the Hamilton Select Board.
Should we send a letter over to Wenham like Bill did back in '21 from you, asking, you know, with these bullets and maybe asking for
I mean,
some of theirs before you have the meeting, so you come in with a,
the purpose of this letter was to try to get them to vote to reopen the agreement. They've done that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just trying to solicit.
Now we
more
come in hot.
guidance from Wenham. I'd be curious what their bullets look like, that's all.
There's the opposite of ours.
I can try to get Steve Poulos to share with me whatever they've discussed so far and bring it to you.
I think they have the same
There's just gonna be,
goal. They want the apportionment piece obviously different, but they want the transparency. They want,
yeah.
you know, frugal spend and.
I do think though that we're gonna probably have to come in a little bullheaded around the cost stuff and just how that's done. And I would be just curious to see how other towns do it.
Yeah, I think that's good.
All right, new business, anything? No? All right, so we have conversations with John. We have the 1-pager that we're gonna draft before the next meeting. Were there any other to-dos?
5 chairs,
The 5-chair meeting with
publicizing the.
We didn't,
Oh.
we authorized Joe to maybe work on a policy for,
Oh, policy,
Yeah.
policy,
Facility use policy.
facility use policy.
Okay. All right, that's a
Okay.
lot.
Look at us.
That's a lot in the next 2 weeks. Okay,
Also,
You're gonna do great. We believe in you.
appreciate that.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wow.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.